pushing Ukraine to join NATO when NATO doesn't want Ukraine. There's no strategic reason, no actual reason to have Ukraine in NATO or to have NATO at all. We shouldn't have NATO at all.
Oh, that's preposterous.
What's the point of NATO?
To keep
Keep
peace.
the Soviets from invading Western Europe. Oh, well, it's been 35 years since they
Actually,
existed.
to keep peace.
How's that worked? To keep peace.
Actually,
we now have the bloodiest war in 80 years in the middle of Europe because of NATO. So how's this peacekeeping
Or
activity?
you could argue, as many people do, that actually the reason is because Ukraine wasn't in NATO. Had it been, Putin wouldn't have invaded.
That's a super crazy. This is like an addiction, and I've been through addiction, so I'm not judging at all, but it's like, I feel really shitty. I've got to have a glass of vodka to feel better.
Are you mocking my mental health?
I'm not, yes. But I'm also saying that I've lived this, so I know what it feels like. It's the thing that is killing you. It's truly killing you, whether it's NATO or vodka. You become convinced is saving you. So you wake up hungover and you're like, oh, I feel so bad. Give me a screwdriver. And you have a screwdriver, you feel better. And you don't realize that you're starting the cycle again.
Would Putin have invaded Ukraine if it had been a member of NATO? No, he wouldn't have done. Because then America would have been obliged to
Russia would
respond.
never. Here's what I know. For a fact, Putin said this for 20 years. Ukraine cannot be a member of NATO. They will not accept that any more that we would accept Chinese missiles in Tijuana, or you would accept Sri Lankan missiles in Glasgow. You're just not going to accept that.
NATO is a defensive organization.
How is it defensive?
Because it has never acted proactively, aggressively.
Really? Where were you when the Yugoslavia war was going on? And they were bombing the shit out of Christians in Yugoslavia. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was pretty offensive.
NATO has always operated in a defensive capacity.
Really?
Yes.
That's how they created Kosovo? Defensively?
It was defensive.
Oh, it was?
Yes, it
Who
was.
was the aggressor there?
Oh, you know, my brother-in-law was literally there.
Just a minute. What you're saying is insane.
It's not insane. NATO has never actually acted unilaterally
Okay, so
aggressively.
the Soviet Union collapses.
It's never attacked anybody without being attacked. It's always been defensive.
Okay, who in Yugoslavia attacked NATO?
Look.
Just no, here's the point where you just admit defeat. Bow your head and be like, you know what? I bow before superior knowledge. I totally got this wrong. I can't believe I had such a silly idea. I'm sorry.
Well, you think nice, good guys in Yugoslavia...
I'm not saying they're nice, good guys. I'm just saying that was not a defensive action. That was an offensive action. Bill Clinton's like, I don't like what you're doing. I'm going to use NATO to kill you. And he did, and then created Kosovo as a NATO base.
Because they were absolute genocidal maniacs.
They may have been naughty. I'm not defending their behavior.
But that's what they were being defended against.
Who are we defending?
The Yugoslavians that were being pillaged and raped and murdered.
By other Yugoslavians?
Yes.
Okay. Whew. This is getting intense. But
NATO is a defensive organization.
Look, you can say it all you want. Just like you can say Zelensky's a beacon of democracy when he's not elected and he's banning parts of Christianity, but he's a dictator.
So just to be clear...
just to be honest about what things are.
Just to be clear, you would have let Putin take what he wants. Because what's the alternative? When he invaded Ukraine.
So I try and deal, especially as I get older, in the world of reality and achievable goals. And here's the reality. Russia is a nuclear-armed power. It's the largest country on Earth by landmass. It's also the remnants of a global empire. So they have a sense of themselves as a global player, and they are because of energy and resources in general. Uranium, I mean, they have a lot of resources the world needs. So they're a real country. They're not Afghanistan. You can't just tell them what to do. Get in line, bitch. They're not going to accept that, okay? So they have said, since the fall of the Soviet Union, you cannot have NATO on our border because it's a critical national interest of ours. So unless you want to risk nuclear war, which we are now doing, you can't move NATO to their border, whether you want to or not. That's just a fact. And if you do, you're going to get a war. We've known that since the fall of the Soviet Union, and we promised not to do it. And we tried to bring, he asked to be in NATO in 2000. He asked George W. Bush to be in NATO. Nobody can test that. This evil dictator who wants to invade Liechtenstein asked to be in NATO. Why wouldn't we let him in NATO? Why did Condi Rice say, well, it can't be in NATO? Why do we have morons like Condi Rice in our U.S. government? I don't know.
So when he invaded, though, what would you let him do?
We're in a hall of mirrors now. Look,
well, not really.
Okay.
We're in a very clear moral moment in history where Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine. It is a European country.
And we side with the dictator,
has been independent
and we fund his
from
secret
Russia
service
since the mid-90s.
Assassinate people.
Yeah, but what do you do? Do you let him take it?
There's nothing moral about this. Look, in the real world, we do things we can achieve. And if we can't achieve something, we don't try and do it because millions will die as we're watching.
So what do you let him do then?
Well, you start with a realistic understanding of the limits of your power, which is all adults have to do. My neighbors may offend me. I want them to turn down the music. I can't just go over there and shoot them. I just can't. It's against the law, and I'll pay a penalty if I do that. So I have to negotiate with them. Will you please turn down the music? Shut up! No, please do it. If they won't, I maybe threaten them. Like, I live in the material, real world.
Right. But once actually he's invaded, what do you do?
Then you have to decide, like, is it worth it?
Right.
Is it worth it?
So that's interesting to me.
1 million Ukrainians are going to die. Their farmland's going to be sold to BlackRock. The Ukrainian nation will cease to exist. They'll flood it with third worlders.
So what do you
do?
do? What do you do?
What would I do?
Yes.
I would say, like, if I took over the government in January of 2022 and we're on the verge of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, I would say, guys, it's not worth trying to impose something that this country will never accept, because if we try to do that, we'll get a war.
So do you let Putin take Ukraine?
You don't let anybody do anything. You realistically
you do.
assess
You
what
either
you
do or
are
you
able
don't.
to do, because you're gambling with the other people's lives. By the way, if 1 million Brits had died, you might have a different perspective, but it's very easy to be like, oh, more Ukrainians should die for the cause of democracy.
No, let me assure you. Let me assure you, if Russia invaded Britain, that would not be the view of the British people. Our view would be to fight to the last man and woman to kick him out. But my question really is...
You really think so?
My question is
You
not...
guys just got invaded over the last 40 years and did nothing, so I don't think so. I don't think you would do that. I think you'd be like, we can't fight back because we have nuclear weapons but no real military, so we'd like negotiate, just like all conquered nations do.
Oh, but
they negotiate on the basis of reality. What can I actually achieve?
Yeah, but respectfully, you're not answering my question, which you don't have to because you're interviewing me in this bit. But the question is, once Putin invaded, do you let him take the whole country? What do you do?
If I were in charge, then?
Yes.
If I came in January of 2022, I would say to the State Department, I would say to the Nato leadership.
No, I'm talking about February, end of February, early March.
At that point, I'm cleaning up a mess caused by the previous administration.
Yes, so assume it's happened.
So let's say I'm Donald Trump, who's actually coming in that exact circumstance.
Right, and he's now wrestling with this very problem.
He certainly is. And
he doesn't want to give Putin the win. And that's my point to you. Do you actually want him to win?
Well, I mean, if your lodestar is whether other people win, you will lose.
Right.
Okay, that's a shitty way to go through life.
But
if I'm trying to prevent you a win, no, I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win for my wife, my children, my neighborhood, my country.
But once he's invaded,
I don't care whether you win or
not. Once he's invaded, what do you do?
Your victory has nothing to do with anything. What I care about is my victory.
But you're in this as much as we are.
No. I care about my country and whether we win. What's good for us? Because I'm in charge of my country. This is theoretical. I'm in charge of nothing.
Is it good for America that Putin wins?
This whole thing has been a disaster. We're going to lose the U.S. dollar over this, okay? Because we followed the advice of people like Boris Johnson, who have no skin in the game whatsoever, but they get to feel like a moral charge, be like, we're on the side of democracy.